The morning sky split open with fire and thunder. Marcus dropped his coffee mug as the sonic boom rattled every window in his isolated cabin. Through the forest, a streak of burning metal carved a path toward Earth, leaving a trail of smoke that twisted like a dying serpent. He grabbed his toolkit and ran toward the crash site. 20 years as a military engineer had taught him that when things fell from the sky, people usually needed help. The crater steamed when he arrived, and at its center knelt something that made his breath catch. She was enormous. 8 feet of muscle and sinew, her skin a deep bronze marked with silver patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Her face, though alien in its angular beauty, held an expression of pain and defiance that struck him as utterly human. Blood, strangely blue, seeped from wounds along her arms and shoulders. The villagers arrived minutes later, armed with hunting rifles and fear. "Stay back, Marcus," old Henrik warned. That thing could be dangerous. But Marcus saw how she protected. Her injured side, how her strange violet eyes tracked the weapons pointed at her with the wariness of someone who expected betrayal. "She's hurt," Marcus said simply, stepping into the crater. The heat from her ship's wreckage made his skin prickle, but he kept walking until he stood before her. Up close, he could see the intricate armor plating that covered parts of her body. The way her chest rose and fell with labored breathing. She spoke, her voice like distant thunder. The universal translator in her throat piece crackled to life. "Human, why do you approach when others retreat?" Her accent was musical, each word carefully chosen. "Because you're bleeding," Marcus replied, offering his hand. "And bleeding things need help, regardless of where they come from." She stared at his outstretched palm for a long moment, then carefully placed her massive hand in his. Her skin was warm, textured like smooth stone. The villagers muttered prayers and curses as Marcus helped her stand. She towered over him, her injured leg barely supporting her weight. "I'm Kestra of the 9th Legion," she said formally. "I was cast out." "Marcus Chen," he replied. "And you're coming with me?" He ignored Henrik's protests as he guided Kestra toward his cabin. Her steps left deep impressions in the earth, and he noticed how she tried to minimize her size, hunching her shoulders as if apologizing for taking up space. At his workshop, she sat carefully on a reinforced stool he used for heavy machinery. Her wounds needed attention, but when he approached with antiseptic, she tensed. "I heal differently than your kind," she warned. "Then teach me," Marcus said quietly. Something in his tone made her relax slightly as he cleaned her wounds with supplies from his medical kit. She explained how her people's biology worked. Her blood carried nanobots that would seal injuries within hours. But infection from alien bacteria could disrupt the process. "Your hands are gentle for a warrior," she observed as he worked. "Who says I'm a warrior?" Marcus asked, carefully bandaging. A deep cut on her forearm. Kestra studied his scarred hands, the way he moved with precise economy. "Your body tells stories, as does mine." She gestured to the silver patterns on her skin. "These mark my victories in battle, each one earned through conquest." "And now?" Marcus asked, meeting her eyes. "I am nothing," she said bitterly. "Too soft for war, too dangerous for peace. My own kind declared me defective." The pain in her voice cut deeper than any physical wound. Marcus finished the bandaging and sat back. "In my experience, the people who get called defective are usually the ones who see things more clearly than everyone else." Their eyes met and held, and for a moment, the vast differences between their species seemed to shrink to nothing at all. 3 days passed in careful observation. Kestra remained in Marcus's workshop, studying everything with the focused attention of a born strategist. She asked endless questions about human tools, technology, and customs, her curiosity apparently insatiable. "This device heats food without flame?" she asked, examining his microwave with fascination. "Radiation waves," Marcus explained, enjoying her wonder. "We're pretty good at finding new ways to make things more convenient." She laughed a sound. "Like gentle thunder. My people would call this soft living. We believe comfort breeds weakness." But her tone suggested she was beginning to question that belief. Marcus learned her story in fragments. The 9th Legion were elite soldiers, bred for conquest across star systems. Kestra had been their finest warrior until she began questioning orders, refusing to eliminate non-combatants, showing mercy where none was expected. Her final act of defiance had been protecting a colony of peaceful farmers her unit was ordered to destroy. "They gave me a choice," she said one evening, as they shared dinner. "Eliminate my emotions through neural restructuring, or face exile. I chose exile." She looked down at her hands. "Now I wonder if I chose correctly, without my legion." "What? Am I human?" Marcus said quietly. "A learning to be human?" When she looked confused, he clarified. "Not the species. Quality. Choosing compassion over orders, individuals over institutions. That's what makes someone human, regardless of what planet they're from." She moved closer on the bench they shared, her massive frame somehow delicate in the lamplight. "And what made you human, Marcus Chen?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Losing. Everything that I thought defined me. Career, marriage, certainty about right and wrong. Turned out none of that was really me anyway." Their shoulders touched, hers broad enough to encompass both of his. That night, she helped him repair the solar array on his roof. Her strength made the work effortless, but it was her careful attention to his instructions that impressed him. Most, she learned quickly, her warrior's discipline applied to peaceful tasks. "You could have a new life here," Marcus suggested, as they worked under the stars, "if you wanted one." Kestra was quiet for so long he thought she hadn't heard. Then, she said, "I have never known peace. In my dreams, I still fight battles. Still hear the screams of those I've killed." Her voice carried centuries of exhaustion. "Peace isn't the absence of war," Marcus said, tightening a bolt. "It's the presence of choice. Every morning you wake up and decide who you want to be that day." He looked up at her profile, noble and strong against the starlight. "You've been choosing to be better. That's peace." She turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting the moon. "You speak as though you know my heart." "Maybe I do," he admitted. The confession hung between them like a bridge. Neither was quite ready to cross. Later, as they climbed down from the roof, Kestra's injured leg gave out. Marcus caught her automatically, his arms wrapping around her waist. For a moment they were pressed together, her warmth surrounding him, her strange, beautiful face inches from his. "I could crush you without thinking," she whispered, but her hands were gentle where they gripped his shoulders. "But you won't," Marcus replied with certainty. "That's not who you are." Something shifted in her expression then, vulnerability replacing the constant vigilance she carried. "Who am I, Marcus? Without war? Without my people's approval? Who am I?" He reached up to touch her face, his human hand dwarfed by her alien features, but welcomed nonetheless. "You're Kestra. You're brave and kind and strong enough to choose love over duty. You're the woman who risked everything to save innocence. You're someone worth knowing." She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. "I've never been called beautiful things," she admitted. "Then let me be the first of many," Marcus said softly. The kiss that followed was gentle, tentative, a question asked and answered between two souls learning to trust again. The ships appeared at dawn like dark tears in the sky. Marcus woke to Kestra's hand on his shoulder, her face grim with recognition. Through his bedroom window, he could see 3 obsidian vessels hovering above the tree line, their surfaces reflecting nothing. "Ninth Legion hunters," Kestra said grimly. "They've come for me." Marcus was already moving, grabbing clothes and his emergency pack. Military training never really left you, and he'd learned long ago that when trouble arrived, you had seconds, not minutes. "How long do we have?" "They'll scan the area first, verify I'm here. 10 minutes. Maybe 15. Kestra's voice was steady, but he could see the fear in her eyes. Not a fear of death, but of what they would do to him for harboring her. "The forest," Marcus said decisively. "I know places they can't track us." Paused, looking up at her. "Unless you want to go with them." The hurt that flashed across her features made him immediately regret the words. "You think I would abandon you now? After what we've shared?" "I had to ask," he said, pulling on his boots. "This is your people we're talking about." "You are my people now," Kestra replied with fierce certainty. The only people who matter. They slipped out through the workshop's back entrance, Kestra moving with surprising stealth for someone her size. Marcus led them through paths he'd learned during his years of isolation. Game trails that wound deep into the old-growth forest where satellites couldn't penetrate the canopy. Behind them, the whine of scanning beams filled the air. Marcus's cabin lit up like a beacon as alien technology dissected every molecule, searching for traces of their quarry. They had maybe a 5-minute head start before the hunters realized their prey had fled. "Tell me about them," Marcus whispered, as they moved deeper into the woods. "How do they think? What are their weaknesses?" Kestra's military training merged seamlessly with his tactical knowledge. They're efficient, thorough, and completely without mercy. 3-person teams, 1 tracker, 1 heavy weapons specialist, 1 commander. They won't stop until I'm dead or captured. What about collateral damage? Her silence was answer enough. Marcus felt the familiar cold focus of combat settle over him, the mental shift that had kept him alive through 3 tours of duty. Then, we make sure they don't find any innocents to hurt. They moved through the forest for hours, Marcus using every survival skill he possessed to mask their trail. Kestra proved surprisingly adaptable, her enhanced senses allowing her to detect pursuit long before human ears could manage it. When she touched his arm and pointed skyward, he could barely make out the whisper-quiet drones scanning the canopy. Above, they're hurting us, Kestra realized as the 3rd drone forced them to change direction, driving us toward something. Marcus studied their surroundings and cursed under his breath. They were being pushed toward Holloway Valley, a box canyon with only one way in or out. It's a kill zone. They want us trapped. Then we give them what they expect, Kestra said, her warrior's mind already working, but not how they expected. That night, they took shelter in a small cave Marcus knew from his hunting days. As they huddled together for warmth, Kestra's massive form curled protectively around him. He felt the strange intimacy that only shared danger could bring. "I'm sorry," she whispered in the darkness. "I've brought death to your peaceful life." Marcus turned in her arms, his hands finding her face in the darkness. "You brought life back to it. Everything else is just details. We'll figure out together." When she kissed him, it was with the desperate passion of someone who might not get another chance. Her strength, so carefully controlled, revealed itself in the fierce tenderness of her touch. They made love with the shadow of death hanging over them, each caress a defiant declaration that some things were worth fighting for. Later, as Kestra slept with her head on his chest, Marcus stared at the cave ceiling and planned. The hunters expected them to run, to hide, to act like prey. But he'd been a soldier once, and Kestra was still a warrior despite her exile. When morning came, they would stop running and start fighting back. The hunt was about to become a war. The abandoned mining facility sat like a metal cancer in the valley floor, its rusted towers reaching toward the dawn sky. Marcus had chosen their battleground carefully, somewhere with cover, multiple escape routes, enough industrial debris to even the odds against superior alien technology. "You're certain about this plan?" Kestra asked for the 3rd time as they approached the facility's perimeter. Her violet eyes scanned the entrances with professional assessment. "No," Marcus admitted. "But running forever isn't living, and I'd rather fight beside you than die hiding." He checked his improvised weapons, human ingenuity applied to alien warfare. "Besides, you're not the only one who's tired of being hunted." The first hunter appeared at the facility's main entrance exactly as Marcus had predicted. The 9th Legion were efficient, but efficiency bred predictability. This one was tall and lean, moving with the fluid grace of a natural predator. Its armor gleamed black as space itself. Marcus triggered the first trap. Diverted Ithidea diverted. From the facility's old processing tanks, cascaded down from hidden pipes. The hunter's energy shield flared to life, but Marcus had counted on that. The acid wasn't meant to kill, just to mask the thermal signature of the explosive charges he'd placed throughout the building. The explosion sent the hunter stumbling, its shield flickering. Kestra struck like a force of nature, her massive fists crushing through alien armor as if it were paper. The fight was brief and brutal. When it ended, she stood over her former comrade's motionless form, her face unreadable. "One down, Marcus," said quietly. "Two to go," Kestra replied, but he could hear the cost in her voice. These were her people, her former friends. Each death cut her deeply. The second hunter was more cautious, using ranged weapons and aerial drones. Marcus had prepared for this too. The facility's old electromagnetic crane, jury-rigged with components from Kestra's crashed ship, sent out a pulse that fried the drone's circuits. In the confusion, Kestra closed the distance with terrifying speed. This hunter was bulkier, a heavy weapons specialist whose armor sparked with built-in weaponry. But armor meant weight, and weight meant predictability. Marcus had learned long ago that sometimes the best weapon was the environment itself. The corroded catwalk gave way under the hunter's mass exactly as planned, sending it plummeting into the machinery below. The silence that followed felt ominous. "Where's the third one?" Marcus whispered. Kestra's head snapped around. Behind us, Commander stood at the facility's rear entrance, weapon trained not on Kestra, but on Marcus. This hunter was smaller than the others, its armor decorated with rank insignia that marked it as elite among the elite. "Subject Kestra," the commander spoke, its voice carrying the cold authority of absolute certainty. "Your defection ends here. Surrender, and the human dies quickly." "Counteroffer," Marcus said, before Kestra could respond. "You leave, and nobody else has to die today." The commander's laughter was like breaking glass, amusing. "Do you know what your pet really is? Human? She's killed thousands. Entire colonies burn at her word. You shelter a monster." "No, Marcus," said firmly. "I shelter someone who chose to be better than what she was made to be. That's called growth. You should try it." Enough. The commander raised its weapon. "Kestra, you have 10 seconds to decide. Your life, or his." Marcus saw Kestra tense, saw the terrible calculation in her eyes. She was measuring angles, distances, probabilities. He knew what she was planning, and he also knew she wouldn't make it in time, so he moved first. The plasma bolt meant for him struck the reactor, housing he'd positioned himself beside. The resulting explosion lit up the valley like a small sun, its electromagnetic pulse frying the commander's systems. In the chaos that followed, Kestra struck with the full fury of her warrior heritage. When the dust settled, Marcus lay pinned. Under a beam, his left shoulder screaming with pain, Kestra knelt beside him, her hands gentle despite their recent violence. "You fool," she whispered, tears tracking down her alien features. "You could have been killed." "But I wasn't," Marcus gasped. "And neither were you. That's what matters." He reached up to touch her face. "It's over, Kestra. You're free." She helped him from the wreckage, her strength making his injuries bearable. As they emerged from the facility, the morning sun painted the valley in golden shadow. Behind them, the hunter's ship sat powerless, their crews defeated. "What now?" Marcus asked. Kestra looked at the destroyed facility, then at him, then at the vast sky above. "Now we build something new, something that's ours." She leaned down and kissed him, soft and sure and full of promise. The war was over. Their life together was just beginning. 2 years later, Marcus woke to the sound of construction. Through the bedroom window of their new home, he could see Kestra directing a crew of human and alien workers as they raised the framework of what would become the first interspecies community center on Earth. The integration hadn't been easy. Fear and prejudice ran deep on both sides, and there had been protests, political battles, and more than a few physical confrontations. But Kestra's quiet strength and Marcus's diplomatic skills had slowly won over hearts and minds. "The foundation is complete," Kestra announced as she entered their bedroom, her massive frame barely fitting through the reinforced doorway they'd had specially installed. Despite her size, she moved with the careful grace of someone always mindful of their impact on more fragile things. Marcus smiled up at her from bed. "And how many regulations did you accidentally break this time?" "Only 3, she replied with mock dignity. Human building codes are unnecessarily complex. Structure either stands or it doesn't. She sat beside him, the bed creaking under her weight. But I am learning patience. It was true. The warrior, who had once solved problems with decisive violence, now spent hours in town meetings, listening to concerns, answering questions, and slowly building bridges between two very different cultures. She'd become something no one had expected. Teacher, an ambassador, a symbol of what was possible when beings chose understanding over fear. The council meeting went well yesterday, Marcus said, reaching up to trace the silver patterns on her arm. He'd learned to read her moods in those shifting designs. The way they brightened when she was happy, dimmed when she was tired. People are beginning to see us as individuals rather than invaders, Kestra agreed. It helps that Dex and Nara have proven so, adaptable. She referred to two other exile warriors who had sought sanctuary after learning of Kestra's success. On Earth, Marcus rolled over to face her fully. Not my people. Our people. This is your world now, too. The smile that spread across her features could have powered the construction site outside. It still amazed him how beautiful she was when she truly smiled, how the alien angles of her face transformed into something that spoke directly to his heart. I have news, she said, suddenly shy in a way that made his pulse quicken. Good news, I hope. Integration program has been approved for expansion. They want to establish centers in 12 more cities. Her voice carried professional pride, but there was something else underneath it. It means travel, public speaking, months away from here. Marcus sat up, reading between the lines. But you don't want to leave. Kestra looked out the window at their construction site, their community, their life together. Spent centuries wandering the stars, conquering new worlds, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. Now, She turned back to him. Vulnerability naked in her violet eyes. Now I understand what I was missing. Roots, connection. The knowledge that when I wake, you will be here. Always, Marcus promised, taking her massive hands in his smaller ones. Hey, but Kestra, this work is important. People need to see what's possible. They need to know that different doesn't mean dangerous. Come with me, she said suddenly. Be my partner in this, not just in private, but in public. Help me show them what we've built together. The request shouldn't have surprised him, but it did. 2 years ago, he'd been a hermit hiding from his own failures. Now she was asking him to stand beside her on the Galactic stage. You're sure? He asked. It won't be easy. There'll be cameras, questions, probably death threats from both sides. Kestra leaned down and kissed him, soft and sure. Easy is overrated. Besides, she grinned, you've already proven you can handle a fight. That evening, they walked through the village together, greeting neighbors, checking on progress at various construction sites. Children ran up to Kestra without fear, having grown up seeing her as the gentle giant who built playgrounds and fixed bicycles. Adults nodded respectfully, many stopping to chat about community matters. Aunt Kestra, called young Emma, running up with a drawing clutched in her small hands. Look what I made. The picture showed 2 figures, one small and one large, holding hands under a rainbow. It was clearly meant to be Marcus and Kestra, rendered in the enthusiastic but imprecise style of a 7-year-old. It's beautiful, Kestra said solemnly, accepting the gift with the same gravity she'd once reserved for military honors. I'll treasure it always. As they continued their walk, Marcus squeezed her hand. Ready to show the galaxy what we've learned here? Kestra looked around at their community, their home, their life together. Humans and aliens worked side by side. Their children played together. Their dreams had begun to merge into something neither species could have achieved alone. Ready, she said. And in hand, the warrior who had learned to love and the engineer who had learned to trust again walked toward their future together, carrying with them the proof that the greatest strength wasn't in conquest or defense, but in the courage to open your heart to someone completely different from yourself. Their love story had become humanity's love story, written across the stars for all to see.